Hello, everyone. My name is Emily. I am 23 years old. And if you ever want a story that feels like a sitcom gone completely feral, let me tell you about the time my dad kicked me out of my own house. Yes, you read that right. He didn't just betray me, he managed to forget the very important detail that legally the property was under my name. Sit tight because this went from heartbreaking to hilarious real quick. I grew up in Illinois with my dad, Robert, and my mom, Linda. My mom was the kind of woman people described as sunshine with a spine of steel. She worked as a nurse, took care of everyone, and still somehow made time to pack my lunches with handwritten notes tucked inside. My dad, on the other hand, was one of those men who thought mowing the lawn once a week made him a hero. He loved me in his own way, but he relied on my mom for everything else. When she passed away from cancer when I was 15, it felt like my entire world shattered. I was devastated, and the only thing that kept me grounded was the memory of her constant encouragement and the plan she had for my future. Mom left behind a life insurance policy. That money was meant for me, her only child, and it was supposed to go toward my education and setting me up for adulthood. At first, I thought Dad would honor that, but instead of using it wisely, he spiraled. Within 2 years, he remarried. And not just to anyone, he married a woman named Karen. Yes, her actual name was Karen. The universe clearly has a sense of humor. Karen came with 2 kids of her own. Jason was 17 at the time, and Lily was 12. Dad insisted that we were all going to blend like a family, and that it was going to be a fresh start. Spoiler alert, we did not blend, and it was anything but fresh. From the start, Karen and her kids treated me like an intruder in my own home. Jason acted like he was the heir to the throne, stomping around, hogging the TV, and calling me Cinderella like it was the funniest joke ever. Lily followed her mother's lead and picked up little habits of leaving messes everywhere, then rolling her eyes when I asked her to clean up after herself. Meanwhile, I became the house elf. I did laundry, I cooked meals, I even helped Jason with his community college applications because apparently typing on a computer was too hard for him. Karen always managed to drop little digs, saying things like how I should be grateful she was around since I needed a mother figure. I always thought to myself that I had a mother, a good one, and I did not need a replacement who criticized everything I did while lounging on the couch scrolling through Facebook. Now here is where the plot thickens. When I turned 18, the house my mom and dad had bought together was re-registered in my name. My mom's portion automatically transferred to me, and Dad signed over his portion during some estate shuffle that I did not really understand at the time. He framed it as wanting to make me feel secure, but looking back, I think he just wanted to avoid paying some taxes and figured nothing would ever change. Regardless, the deed had one name on it: mine. Emily Sanders. Not Robert, not Karen, not Jason, not Lily, just me. At the time, I did not flaunt it. I kept the paperwork in a folder and quietly moved on with life. I went to college, got my degree in accounting, and by 23, I was working full-time. I still lived in the house because it made sense financially, and honestly, I wanted to keep a connection to the only home my mom had ever known with me. I paid for a lot of my own expenses, covered groceries, paid the Wi-Fi bill, and even chipped in for utilities. I was pulling my weight and then some. Meanwhile, Jason, now 20, was still finding himself, which was code for playing video games in the basement and eating Hot Pockets all day. Lily, now 15, was glued to TikTok like her phone was surgically attached to her hand. Neither of them had jobs, and Karen proudly called herself a stay-at-home mom, despite the fact that both of her kids were fully capable of microwaving their own snacks. The tension kept building. Karen had this obsession with space and control. She wanted my room for her craft studio. Jason kept whining about wanting the basement for his gaming lounge. Lily just wanted me out of the way entirely because I was too judgy whenever I asked her not to leave moldy Capri Sun pouches stuffed between couch cushions. It was constant, and every time I tried to set boundaries, Dad brushed me off. He would say things like, "Emily, just let it go. It is not worth the fight." Yeah. Then, one Saturday morning, it all came to a head. Dad sat me down at the kitchen table with his serious parent face. Karen hovered nearby, trying and failing to hide her smug grin, while Jason leaned against the fridge like this was the greatest show on earth. Dad cleared his throat and said, "Emily, there is not enough room in this house for so many people. You are an adult now, and it is time for you to move out." Then I laughed at first because I genuinely thought he was joking. I said, "You do realize I literally pay bills here, right?" He did not blink. He just repeated that I would figure it out because I was smart and capable. Meanwhile, Karen was practically glowing, and Jason actually high-fived her like they had just won a championship game. Lily popped her head in from the living room and said, "Finally." I felt this wave of anger and sadness crash over me. This was my home, my mom's home, the place I had memories in. And now I was being shoved out like yesterday's trash because Karen wanted a craft room and Jason wanted more space to rot his brain on video games. I did not want to break down in front of them, so I packed a bag, kept my head high, and walked out the door. I crashed at my friend Hannah's apartment that night. Lying there on her couch, staring at the ceiling, I was replaying everything in my head. The entitlement, the smug faces, the absolute betrayal from my own father. And then it hit me like a lightning bolt. Wait a second, wasn't the house in my name? Cue the world's pettiest revenge arc. All right, buckle up because this is where the sitcom energy turned into a full-blown soap opera with a laugh track. The Monday after my dad kicked me out, I marched straight into the county clerk's office like a woman possessed. I was still raw with anger, but there was this electric current of satisfaction humming under my skin. I asked for a certified copy of the deed, and when the clerk handed it over, I nearly lost it right there at the counter. Clear as day, in bold black print, it said, "Emily Sanders, sole owner." I swear I laughed so hard I almost dropped the paper. People in line turned to look at me like I had lost my mind, but I could not stop. My dad, in his infinite wisdom, had actually forgotten that years ago he had signed everything over to me. The same man who raised me to always read the fine print had completely neglected the fine print that proved he and his new family were basically squatters in my house. Once I caught my breath, I walked out of that office like I had just won the lottery. And in a way, I had. I felt like my mom was somewhere watching with popcorn, cheering me on. I was not just going to reclaim my space, I was going to serve poetic justice with a side of salt. Step one was the locksmith. I called and scheduled him for that afternoon while I knew Dad, Karen, and the freeloading duo would be out. Karen had some sort of women's group she never shut up about. Jason was at the gym pretending to work out while really just taking mirror selfies. And Lily had cheer practice. Dad usually tagged along with Karen, probably because she never let him have more than 3 feet of leash at a time. Timing was perfect. When the locksmith arrived, I handed him the deed like I was presenting Excalibur to a knight. He swapped out every single lock in the house with the efficiency of a man who had seen too much family drama in his line of work. I even had him rekey the garage and basement doors because I was not about to risk Jason crawling in through a window for his precious gaming lounge. By the time he was finished, I felt this rush of power I had never experienced before. This was not just changing locks. This was reclaiming my home, my dignity, and every ounce of respect they had stripped away from me. But I did not stop there. No, this needed flair. I grabbed a bright pink sticky note from my office supplies, slapped it on the front door, and wrote in the neatest handwriting I could manage, "Since there isn't enough room in this house for so many people, you'll need to find somewhere else to stay. Love, the actual homeowner." I underlined actual homeowner twice for dramatic effect. It was the kind of petty move my mom would have smirked at and said, "Good girl." Then I sat on the porch with a Diet Coke, legs crossed, sunglasses on, like the queen of my domain. I waited. About an hour later, I heard the family caravan pulling into the driveway. First came the slam of car doors, then Karen's shrill voice calling my name like she was about to audition for a horror movie. When she realized the locks had been changed, she let out a scream so loud the neighbor's dog started barking. I swear it was the exact sound of someone watching their winning lottery ticket blow down a sewer drain. Jason stormed up the porch steps, red in the face, pounding on the door as if he could break it down by sheer entitlement. He kept shouting about how his setup was inside, like the gods themselves would strike me down for separating him from his sacred gaming chair and LED lights. Lily stood behind them, holding her phone up to record everything for TikTok like this was her big break. And then there was Dad. Oh, Dad. He tried to go with the classic guilt trip, looking at me with wounded puppy eyes. He started in with how I was overreacting, how families should stick together, and how my mom would never want me to do this. The thing is, he had already lost the moral high ground the second he kicked me out of my own house. I sipped my Diet Coke, let the silence drag out just long enough to make them sweat, and then said, "You wanted me out. Congrats. Mission accomplished. Now you're out too." So here is where the comedy of errors turned into a three-ring circus, complete with cops, tantrums, and a grown man trying to steal my PlayStation. Naturally, after I locked them out and dropped the mic with my little sticky note, they did not just pack up and move on with their lives. That would have been far too logical. Instead, my phone started blowing up within the hour. Dad called me nonstop, cycling between angry voicemails and desperate ones. In one, he shouted that this was his house and I was being ungrateful. In the next, he got all teary-voiced and tried to guilt-trip me with how hard it was raising me after Mom died. Then, when that did not work, he shifted to threats. He told me he would go to the police and have me thrown out. I sat there on the couch, sipping another Diet Coke, thinking, sure, good luck with that. Well, he actually did call them. And let me tell you, when the officers showed up at the house, the look on my dad's face was priceless. He strutted up the walkway with Karen behind him like he was about to deliver the final blow, as if the cops were going to drag me out by my ankles while Karen christened her new craft studio with glitter glue. The officer was polite, professional, and honestly looked more amused than anything. Dad started ranting immediately about how his daughter had locked him out of his own home and how he wanted me removed immediately. I did not even argue. I just calmly pulled out the certified deed I had picked up from the county clerk's office that morning. I held it up like a golden ticket. The officer looked it over, double-checked the name against my driver's license, and then turned to my dad with the kind of expression you give a child who insists 2 + 2 = 5. He said, "Sir, she's the legal owner. This is a civil matter." Translation, there was nothing they could do, and Dad looked like a complete fool for even trying. Karen, of course, did not take that well. She launched into this shrieking tirade about squatters' rights, which was hysterical considering they had not even lasted a full 24 hours outside. She stomped her foot like she was casting a spell and demanded the officer enforce her rights as a resident. The cop actually snorted before regaining his composure and explaining that squatters' rights do not magically appear the minute you spend the night somewhere. Jason stood there in the background with his arms crossed, looking like someone had just told him Santa Claus was fake, and Lily was live streaming the whole thing to her TikTok followers with captions like, "My evil stepsister is crazy," as if this was some reality show. After the officer left, I decided to be the bigger person. I told them they could come back in to collect their belongings, but only while I supervised. No free-for-all, no chance to rummage through my stuff, no lingering. I opened the door, stood in the entryway like a bouncer, and watched them scatter through the house like ants at a picnic. Karen was muttering under her breath the entire time about injustice. Jason was stomping around like he owned the place. And Dad was sulking so hard you'd think I had just repossessed his soul. And then, of course, Jason proved once again why he was the crown jewel of freeloaders. I caught him in the living room, stuffing my PS5 into his duffel bag like it was just a casual afterthought. He actually froze when I yanked it right back out in front of him, and he had the audacity to argue that since I did not even play it that much, I did not really need it. His face was so serious, like he thought this was a slam dunk argument. I looked him dead in the eye and said, "Well, I don't use the bathroom much either, but it's still mine." If you thought the chaos ended once they dragged their duffel bags out of my living room, oh no, that was just Act 2. Act 3 was the family gossip fallout, complete with angry phone calls, Facebook rants, and one of the funniest butt dials I've ever received. Word travels fast in my family, mostly because my dad has the communication skills of a toddler who dropped his ice cream. Within a day of being locked out, he had called practically every relative we had, from my Aunt Cheryl in Indiana to my cousin Ben, who I have not seen since he tried to sell Cutco knives at Thanksgiving. His version of events was a masterpiece of selective truth. According to Dad, his ungrateful daughter had stolen his house and left her family on the street. He made himself sound like a victim of elder abuse rather than a grown man who had signed over a deed and then kicked out the legal homeowner. The first call came from Aunt Cheryl, who was practically vibrating with rage. She told me I had humiliated my father and destroyed the family's reputation, like I had personally rented a billboard that said, Robert Sanders is a clown. I let her rant for a bit before calmly suggesting she check public records. That was all it took. 10 minutes later, she called back, suddenly quiet, clearly having looked it up and realizing my name was right there in black and white as the sole owner. She tried to backpedal, muttering about how Dad must have forgotten, but the damage was done. The narrative shifted quickly once the truth spread through the grapevine. See, most of the extended family didn't even know my mom had secured the house for me. They assumed Dad was the primary owner and that I had swooped in like a vulture. But when they learned that Mom had set everything up years ago, and that Dad had literally kicked me out of my own house to please his new wife and stepkids, the sympathy flipped like a pancake. Suddenly, the whispers weren't about how I had betrayed my father, but about how he had betrayed me. Uncle Gary called to say he was embarrassed for my dad. My cousin Claire texted me laughing emojis with legendary move. Even Grandma, who usually takes Dad's side no matter what, said she was disappointed in him. That one had to sting. Meanwhile, Karen decided to take her fight to the battlefield she knew best, Facebook. She posted a novel-length rant that could have doubled as a bad Hallmark movie script. According to her, I had stolen her children's future, ripped away the roof over their heads, and left them homeless and traumatized. She wrote about how Jason and Lily had lost their sense of stability and how I had cruelly deprived them of the only home they'd ever known. The comments section was full of her friends from yoga and PTA meetings, clutching their pearls and offering sympathy. The thing is, Karen conveniently forgot to mention that her children were 20 and 15, not toddlers, and that she herself had contributed nothing financially to that house. The best part, they weren't even homeless. Within 48 hours, they had moved into Karen's sister's house 2 towns over. I know this because Jason, in his infinite wisdom, accidentally butt-dialed me. I picked up thinking he had called me on purpose, but instead, I was treated to the sound of his voice, bragging to someone about his new basement setup. He was going on about how it was better anyway, how he had more space for his monitors, and how his streaming career was about to take off. I sat there on my couch, sipping tea, listening to the world's most oblivious freeloader hype up his exile, like it was an upgrade. I know this because Jason accidentally butt-dialed me, and I overheard him bragging about how his new basement setup was better anyway. The funniest part of this whole roller coaster. About 3 months later, my dad actually tried to reconcile. Out of nowhere, he showed up on my porch one Sunday afternoon looking like a kid who had been forced to eat vegetables. He was holding his baseball cap in both hands, eyes downcast, and he started in with how he missed his little girl and how family was more important than anything. It was the most dramatic act of humility I had ever seen him attempt, and for a second I wondered if he had finally learned his lesson. But then I asked the one question that really mattered. I asked him if he was willing to dump Karen and her freeloading kids, because there was no way I was opening my door to that circus again. Without missing a beat, he said no. He actually had the gall to look surprised when I smiled politely and told him, "Then enjoy your new life." He left with the same expression someone gets when they bite into a lemon expecting it to be sweet. That was the final nail in the coffin for me. Whatever guilt I had been carrying evaporated in that moment. He had made his choice, and it was not me. And honestly, I was fine with that. I had my house, my peace, and the satisfaction of knowing that my mom's foresight had protected me even from beyond the grave. Since then, life has been blissfully boring in the best way possible. The house is mine, fully mine, and I have made it exactly the way I want it. No glitter craft studio disasters, no moldy Capri Sun pouches hiding in the couch, no 20-year-old man-child hogging the Wi-Fi for his streaming career. Just quiet, comfort, and the freedom to walk into my kitchen without hearing someone complain that I ate the last Hot Pocket, and Jason's so-called dream basement. That has become my favorite kind of petty revenge. I cleaned it up, repainted the walls, added decent lighting, and started renting it out to a nice, quiet grad student from the local university. He pays his rent on time, keeps to himself, and the best part is that the rent covers the exact amount my dad used to contribute to the household before Karen convinced him to quit his second job. The irony is so thick I could spread it on toast. Every time I deposit that rent check, I cannot help but think of Jason whining about how he needed that basement for his gaming lounge. Now it is paying for my utilities and part of my mortgage. That is the kind of poetic justice you cannot script. So, to sum it all up, my dad kicked me out of the house because my stepmom and her kids hated me. He thought he was teaching me a lesson about adulthood, but in reality, he just handed me the setup for the greatest revenge arc of my life. Since the house was re-registered in my name, I got the last laugh, and trust me, it was the sweetest sound I have ever heard. Right after Karen screeching at the locksmith when she realized the locks had been changed. The moral of the story: always know whose name is on the deed, do not mess with accountants who keep meticulous paperwork, and never underestimate the power of a certified copy from the county clerk's office. Thanks for sticking around for this saga. If you enjoyed the drama, the petty revenge, and the cosmic irony, drop a like, leave a comment, and subscribe for more stories, because life has a way of serving up the most ridiculous sitcoms when you least expect it.